morning.
Good morning, bitches.
Whew, it's Thursday.
Oh my god. I can almost taste the weekend.
Almost, but not quite.
But not quite.
We're almost there.
Yeah. So, after the triumph of Tuesday's
Black
Sabbath episode, today we're going to talk about a couple of records from 1995, which to set the scene, I turned 13 in 1995. You turned 14 right at the end.
Yeah, that seems right.
Right? No, wait.
No, that actually doesn't
That's
seem
not right. You
No.
turned 12 right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I put your birthday at the wrong side of Christmas.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute.
So, should I go first?
Yeah.
So, the record I was going to talk about is What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis. So, 1995 was 2 years before Tony Blair and the Labour Party came to power. So it was still the tail end of John Major's very grey, bleak government. Not to say that Tony Blair was an ideal leader, but actually he was a leader of... Him coming to power was a moment of great hope in 97. But that hadn't happened yet. It was also 2 years before we lost Princess Diana. So she was right in the middle of 95. She was probably being photographed on yachts with various people. I think the divorce was going on by that point. I don't know, I've lost track. So it was like on the cusp of England sort of Britain finding its stride again. I feel like with that we weren't quite there yet. But this record really this record and some other things that came out around the time sort of kick-started the Britpop thing.
Yeah, because what other bands, like British bands, were really big at that moment?
Well, so importantly, Blur.
Right.
Which I will come back to. A lot of the Britpop stuff was Pulp were putting records out, but they weren't right. They weren't really...
It wasn't as mainstream, right?
Yeah. Because I think Different Class was the next year. That was the one that propelled them. That and Waving His Bum at Michael Jackson at the Brit Awards. And
fans.
Suede, I don't remember exactly when they happened. It was all around the same time, but in different places. So Oasis are from Manchester. And a lot of that, there were two different things going on, because there was the really London-y bands, which I would put Blur in, even though they were more Essex, or he is, I don't know. I don't know where they consider themselves from. The bass player went to university in the same town as me, which is South Coast. And Elastica and Suede, I consider London bands. Pulp was Sheffield. And then because there had been the Manchester situation before that. You're looking at me very blankly.
I don't. I don't know that in America we have as much of a context for what was a London band versus a Manchester band, unless the bands themselves were explicit about it. And
well, in a very...
they made a point of being we're not that, or had some kind of
I would say
pronounced regional alignments.
Certainly in this context in Britpop, which I don't really like the word for Britpop, because I don't think that this music is pop music exactly, but it was quite class related, and or like Blur and Suede are very like art school bands, and Pulp and Oasis, and bands like Ocean Color Scene and things like that, they were much more like real working or trying to work dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this record is Oasis's second. The first record was definitely Maybe.
Right, that's right. That's what I was trying to remember.
Yeah. And that one did have some hits on it too. That had Live Forever and Cigarettes and Alcohol. And a couple of others, I think. And I was aware of them from that one. But at 13, just about 13, I wasn't really quite... what's my friend doing?
And we're back.
Yeah, I wasn't really paying that much attention to anything that wasn't just straight up on the radio.
Yeah.
Which Oasis definitely was, but like this is what's the story? Morning Glory is the one that kind of got them on the radio some more. I was aware of what was going on, and so yeah, I don't really remember. I mean, there was this huge press moment about the Oasis versus Blur thing, which did that happen?
Yeah,
because they put out. I thought it was the albums. It wasn't the albums. It was some singles. It was "Roll With It" from Oasis and "Country House" by Blur were coming out on the same day, and the record labels and consequently press kind of blew it up into this whole Oasis versus Blur thing because they had sort of already made it clear they didn't like each other very much, which makes sense. And I think that Blur, Country House did sell more. They did get to #1 that week. But I think ultimately Oasis have sold more records, or certainly more copies of this album.
Well, this album, it was huge.
Right.
Absolutely massive. Because I remember having this album too. And I did really love it. I remember listening to it a lot and finding the songs really catchy, although I had very little understanding of what they were about or what they meant. But like, and it did sound different than anything else that was kind of out there, at least for me, like in America in the 90s.
Right, because what had been going on before, and I think a big part of why Britpop was such a moment in the UK was that that British music and certainly British like guitar music had really lost its way and disappeared. So there was like Manchester, which was Happy Mondays and Stone Roses and bands like that. That was earlier, and that had a bit of a moment. Depends on what circles you were in. I mean, there were some like radio hits,
but it definitely seemed a little more niche, you know.
Certainly here,
yeah.
But then, like, you know, the amount of American bands that suddenly, I mean, mainly Nirvana, but like, you know, just prior to this was grunge and all of the charts that weren't Europop, because Europop was still very big. And like there was a lot of dance music that was huge in the singles charts in the UK. And then there was like Nirvana. Mainly just Nirvana, honestly. I don't remember like a lot of other American bands. We'll come back to that with your one, I guess. But then suddenly there was like all these British bands, and it was really, really exciting. And that's certainly like how I perceived it as a 13-year-old. Like, it's possible that there's a lot that I didn't catch on to at all, because the way that I consumed music at the time, which I was spoken about before, was just radio and like Top of the Pops on the TV, and that was basically it. A little bit after this is when I got a subscription to NME and decided that I was going to go all in on all of that. But yeah, this album, me and my friends, just everybody, it wasn't just me and my friends, everybody had this album.
Yeah, it was ubiquitous.
I had a friend called Alexia, and she had these two cousins who were a bit older than us, and they used to like dress like the Gallagher brothers and spend a lot of time learning to walk like them, because Liam Gallagher had a really specific, very strange walk. I don't know if he still does.
I mean, but it was a record that everybody knew and everybody loved and everybody knew the songs from. And like it here, at least it seemed like it was kind of a, like you could listen to a ton of different kinds of music, but at like a very base level, you knew those like 3 huge Oasis songs, which like, so at our wedding, I have to bring this up, you know.
Oh, I forgot about this. Yeah.
At our wedding party, we did, those of you who are there know, we had a huge karaoke bash the day after the wedding, and everybody had many, many, many drinks. And there was a moment where I think maybe Lydia came up to me and said, like, you want to do a song with your cousins? My 2 cousins, who were like my brothers growing up. And I was like, I didn't even need to think about a song that we would all know. And I was like, Don't Look Back in Anger. Just do it. And it was so epic. It was like one of the highlights of the night, me and my 2 cousins, because I knew they would know that song. Mm-hmm. I knew they would remember that song. And I knew they would fucking go for it if we all did it. Because it has that, you know.
Yeah, you can't half-ass it.
Yeah, and I guess it does have that kind of like a song you could sing along to at the pub and everybody's gonna know. Like it feels like that. A lot of their songs do, which maybe speaks to their more like working class kind of just like the bloke down the block or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what they were going for. Weirdly, it is sort of a bit what Blur were going for, but they're just tossers. They couldn't do it properly.
Yeah, they
hate Blur.
That's kind even. Okay, so we're running.
Yeah,
it's over.
Go.
I'm gonna just launch into it. 1995. You know, me, 5th grade. No Doubt did come to me via the radio because Just a Girl was a mega, massive, huge hit. And I remember hearing it on the radio around the same time I started hearing other female-fronted rock music on the radio. And it was one of the first times that I had heard that. Or I had heard like women in bands that weren't like pop bands or hip-hop bands. Like, you know, this was also, I guess, around the time of Alanis. And
yeah.
But what was really captivating to me about No Doubt and about Tragic Kingdom was like the way that it was both like tough and very feminine, that it was the visuals around that album, because I had Tragic Kingdom on cassette tape first.
Yeah.
But like the whole visual design of that album had this really cool mix of like sweet and colorful, but like kind of rotten. Like it had all that squished rotten fruit in the album artwork. And I just thought Gwen Stefani was so fucking cool. I just was like, she was the coolest girl I had ever seen. And like, she was gorgeous, of course. She was beautiful, but like the way she dressed was like really weird and kind of tough. And like, I definitely went out and found a pair of like old post office uniform pants after that. And I had a pair of big, like chunky sneakers. Mm-hmm. You know, her style was really cool, and the songs were so fun. They were so fun and like uplifting and confrontational, but from like a very feminine perspective. And I hadn't really encountered that mix before. So I went all in on it. I mean, I love Tragic Kingdom. There are a couple of songs in there that are like meh. And I will argue that Don't Speak is one of my least favorite songs on the album. You love it, and I know, and it's fine.
Well, it was Just a Girl
Just think it's
was a
boring.
single in the UK. But I may be misremembering this, but I think that Don't Speak was the first single in the UK, or it was certainly the first single that anyone paid any attention to, and it was a monster hit. It was number one for a while. And then they either then re-released Just a Girl, or that is the first time they released it, but it was afterwards. And it was a hit, but not as much. Because we had been introduced to them via this song that is not typical of their output.
Mm-hmm.
So then we were like, oh, they're a ska band.
Yeah. And that is also...
Which is also very, like, that 90s ska. There were a few songs that, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones had one radio hit.
Which, honestly, I'm proud of them
yeah,
for that.
Good for you guys.
Thank you. We really have so little,
There was like one or two bands that had one hit, and I can't think who the others were, but not a big musical moment for us in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge, and I think no doubt definitely came out of that scene, which, like, it was also something that this album really opened me up to, because, like, not only did Tragic Kingdom just open me up to to California as a concept, like, their sound was so rooted in that, like, Orange County, California, like, pop punk ska band sound. I had already been listening to Green Day, but did not associate it with a region or a place at all. It didn't have, like,
an interesting reference.
any...
I never thought my brain never put Green Day and No Doubt in the same place.
Because they were, like, part of kind of adjacent scenes,
yeah.
But, like, I mean, I'm sure there was crossover. And from the first No Doubt album, because I did get their first album after that, which is, like, it's not great unless you have nostalgia for it, which I do. But, like, reading the liner notes and the thank you section of that album brought me to multiple other bands that I would go on to know and love, most notably the Dancehall Crashers, who were even more near and dear to my heart than No Doubt would be. But that was one of the top 3 albums that I would just, like, play on a loop and sing at the top of my lungs in my bedroom. And for that, I will be forever grateful. It has now morphed into one of my favorite albums to clean the house by.
It's true. It's one of my favorite albums to clean the house by. It's interesting that I never owned it. I did love Don't Speak, and I did love Just a Girl. But maybe I heard something else and was like, that's enough.
I mean,
I had friends who had it. I might have borrowed it and just been like,
Yeah. I mean, the opening track is Spiderwebs, which I think everybody forgets.
Well, I swear I never heard that song until I moved to America, and my friend Melanie always does it at karaoke.
Yeah, because that Spiderwebs is a hit, Just a Girl was a hit, Don't Speak was a huge hit, and then there might have been 2 other songs that were, like, lesser singles, but were still out there. I mean, if you haven't listened to Tragic Kingdom in a while, it's worth revisiting, especially now that it is summer and you might be looking for something a little more uplifting.
Don't Speak absolutely slays a karaoke.
I will give you that. It is a better karaoke song than it is just an actual song to listen to. But huge album. Huge album for me. And, I was lucky enough to see No Doubt a couple of times. One of the shows that my mom took me to when I was way too young to be going to shows in Boston. Grateful that we did. Mm-hmm. First time I saw No Doubt was at a club called Mamakin, which is the club that Aerosmith owned in Boston.
Oh, good job, everybody.
It was great. We waited outside for ages, like in the rain, next to, like, the band's tour bus, which was blowing bus fumes in our face for the entire time. But we got inside. The club was super, super small and packed. And I remember, like, probably sitting on top of a cigarette machine so I could see because I was small. Terrible opening act. I don't know who the opening act was, but I remember it was one of the worst bands I'd ever seen in my life. And then they came out and just absolutely crushed it. Like, it felt like a punk show. It was a punk show. And, like, that stayed with me. I think I saw them again at a slightly larger venue, and it was still great, and I still loved it. But that first show and that like tiny, shitty, like dive bar, brilliant. It was beautiful.
I needless to say never saw Oasis. Actually, talking about singles, I was looking it up. This What's the Story, Morning Glory had 6 singles off it.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
What are there 12 songs on the album?
Probably, yeah. I mean, that might be like 13, but still.
Yeah.
It's a lot of singles.
That's a lot of singles. 50% of your album hits. I mean, what else could you ask for?
I mean, that kind of speaks volumes as to how just gigantic it was. I mean, I think like at least one of them was out before the record, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not lyrically a wonderful album either. Just to go back to it for a second.
Yeah, I mean, neither
we were
was Tragic
listening to
Kingdom,
it.
yeah.
We were listening to it in the car that time, and there's that song "Cast No Shadow."
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
This is just a song for drunk men. To
Yeah,
cry to.
sad dudes to cry to at the bar.
I would say before we play our song, there is, I believe it's a DVD that I have not seen, but there are clips from it on YouTube, and I will put them somewhere in the comments. Of Noel Gallagher recently, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, doing commentary on Oasis videos.
Oh, yeah.
And it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Just seek it out. Somebody did a supercut of all of the like best things that he said. There's one video he claims to have never seen before. He's just like, that bloke there, he wasn't the drummer. The drummer just didn't turn up. That guy's just pretending I don't know who he was, never saw him again. And they're just like, I think it is the Roll With It video. Something of this one. He's like, yeah, I got so drunk the night before that I fell asleep at a bus stop, and those are the same clothes. I didn't go home. Like, there's a lot of insight. Check it out. He's a character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's play our song because I have to go to work.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we will be back next week with
Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix.
We're talking about Are You Experienced on Tuesday. Anyway, this is not a Jimi Hendrix song. This is one of our songs. Not thematically spot on, but mentions the 90s in the title. So the song is called Come On Brenda. It's the 90s, for Christ's sakes. You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I wanna hear you can do what you wanna do, 'cause you're not that strong. I wanna hear you can do what you wanna do, 'cause you know that's wrong. And you can go, but you know. And you can go, but you know. know you don't can't reap what you sow anymore.